Got the Bible, coffee, ticket ready for admission. I'm doing something different today. I'm going to stand up. I just feel I do all my videos sitting down, and I can still read. I didn't see your second comment, though. You had two in there. Let me fix something. Flip that around. There. Shh, be very, very quiet. Candy, the wonder dog, is hunting rabbits. No, she's right here. Here she is. Come here. You notice I put her up on the thumbnail. I have her treat ready. Shake the ball. Lay down. Speak. All right, come on up. And Candy has her treat. She is looked after. Years ago, I was at a conference in downtown Toronto at a hotel, ballroom, whatever, chairs, podium, lectern. And I went up to the keynote speaker afterwards who was hosting the event. And I mentioned to him, he stood at a lectern with a microphone and he gave his speech, he gave his address to this conference. And I'm trying to remember what year this was. It would have been 2016, 17, 18, somewhere in there. And I said, why are you static? You know, there are microphones now, a headset. You can walk around the stage. Motion creates emotion. And, you know, you can be more animated. And he liked the idea. And it wasn't an original idea of my own. I think I had borrowed it from Tony Robbins. Motion creates emotion. And so just sitting down in this chair and holding forth as I do on most of my videos, I thought, I'll stand up. Although I'm a little far away and I have to lean in a bit to maybe read the comments, we'll see. And it seems I can read them okay from here. I've got the brightness set up on the tablet. The Bears, ha ha ha, yeah, given to me. I never buy any branded stuff personally. I don't buy it myself, but if someone gives me something with a branded name on it or a team name, I'm Scottish. At any rate, what I wanted to talk about tonight is the political landscape in Canada, as I think I wrote in the description, the ever-shifting political landscape in Canada. And man, oh man, some disconcerting news on the federal election front. And something similar to what I had predicted. I had predicted a few nights ago, within the last week or so. First of all, I said that Mark Carney, I think I did a video, I think it was introducing Canada's next Prime Minister, Mark Carney, because you have to remember that whoever the Liberals choose to replace Justin Trudeau, that individual automatically becomes the Prime Minister of Canada, because the Liberal Party holds the most seats in the House of Commons. And because they have the most seats, whoever leads their party automatically is the Prime Minister. And with Trudeau resigning the leadership, or signaling that he is going to resign, when the Liberals pick their new leader on March 9th, Trudeau vacates the leadership, he vacates the Prime Minister office, and whoever the Liberals have put in his place, elected as leader, that person becomes the Prime Minister. And then we at some point go to the polls. At some point after that leadership race has come out, Parliament is prorogued, which means suspended until March, I believe it's March 24th. At that point, the legislature will reconvene, and then the Conservatives, NDP, Bloc, Green, any party can then put forward a motion on their day. They can put forth a motion of no confidence. And then it's a question of whether or not the motion of no confidence passes or not. If the Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, and the Conservatives put forward a motion of no confidence, then the Liberals would, they would vote against it, and the Conservatives would vote in favor, but the Conservatives would need either the Bloc Québécois or the NDP to join in with them, or else the Liberal government will stand. And that's not entirely outside of the realm of possibility. And what has happened now? I'm going to read what's being written. Danny refuses to be a walking billboard. Maybe better than myself, because my Scottish background, if someone gives me a shirt or a hat or something and I don't have to pay for it, well, then I'll wear it. And I have Danny also writing, can that person do any more damage to Canada before an election? Well, we'll see. We will see what happens. I'm still convinced Mark Carney is going to win the election, or win the leadership, and will become the leader of the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister of Canada. Right now, he's pretty much in hiding. He's not in the news. He's not anywhere. He has cabinet members, Jolie, I forget the name of the Minister of the Environment. He has a number of cabinet individuals coming forward and endorsing him. And this is a coronation. The Liberals don't believe their own rhetoric about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. They don't believe any of this stuff about, it's 2015 and we need to have gender balance. They've never had a female leader, and they never will. So right now, the news is promoting, Jolie has endorsed Mark Carney. Another Guilbeault, is that the name of the environment minister, is endorsing Carney. He's racking up the cabinet members who are endorsing his leadership. And with Parliament being prorogued, we don't have daily question periods, so we're not getting coverage from the news media talking about, how the Conservatives are grilling the Liberals over the doubling of housing costs, the skyrocketing energy costs, the employment situation, anything. Their mismanagement is being shunted aside. And so all the focus is on the Liberals. And now EKOS, EKOS, has just come out with a poll. And their poll has the Liberals skyrocketing, basically, from in and around 20 or so percent, 20, 21, 22, 23, either 20 or low 20s, all the way up to 32%. And the Conservatives hovering in and around 39%. So you have a 7-point gap between the Conservatives and the Liberals. And I've spoken of this before, and this is my fear, is that the Liberals get momentum. And once they get momentum, which they're getting now, then there's a bit of a herd mentality in Canada. We like to, follow the herd. And if we see the herd shifting direction, a large number or a significant number of people switching from the Conservatives, I wasn't too sure about this Poilievre and this Mark Carney guy, governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England, working at the United Nations. Well, maybe I shouldn't trust this Poilievre. That's what the CTV and Global and CBC News seem to be telling me. I think this Mark Carney, maybe he wouldn't be too bad. And that's my fear. And that's what you have to remember that in the 2019 election, so Trudeau was elected to a majority in 2015. Then he went to the polls in 2019 and only managed a minority while losing the popular vote. He only got about 32% of the popular vote. The Conservatives were slightly higher, but the Liberals won most of the seats, and that is because the Conservative vote is largely concentrated in provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan. They actually romp in the West. The Conservative vote is said to be very inefficient. They get tons of votes in the West, but not enough in the East to win a significant enough number of seats to govern. What the Conservatives need is they need at least suburbia. The Liberals can have their urban fortresses in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, even Calgary, or especially Edmonton, a government town. They tend to do well there. What do I have Danny writing? Canadians can't be that stupid, can they? The Liberals without Justin are still the Liberals. Yeah, they are. And Mark Carney is very much in the Trudeau mold. Mark Carney is very much going to be implementing the same agenda that Trudeau did. But Mark Carney isn't as much. You have to remember, Justin Trudeau never did anything before becoming Prime Minister of Canada. He was a backbench MP, got in to the Parliament on the coattails of his father's last name, Trudeau. If his name was Smith, he never would have gotten elected to anything. But before being a backbench MP, he wasn't even in the shadow cabinet. Before that, Trudeau was a ski instructor. He worked at this private school in British Columbia. His departure from that school, there's a lot of allegations out there. Trudeau's own story as to why he left keeps changing. I tend to think there may be something to the speculation. Danny's writing that he was a creepy drama teacher. In point of fact, I don't think Trudeau actually did much in the way of teaching at that school. The way I figure it, things break down is that Trudeau was hired at that school because it's a private school that relies on tuitions and donations in order to function. And having the son of former Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau on their letterhead, on their fundraising, as they list their staff, look, we've got Justin Trudeau. Remember him when he eulogized his father so beautifully at Notre Dame Cathedral in Montreal? He's on our staff. Oh, maybe someone will write us a check. That's why they hired him, not because he's a great teacher or anything of that nature, just because of his last name. So he had never accomplished anything in of himself other than being the son of Pierre Trudeau, winning the lottery, as it were. Danny is writing down the allegations. There has never been any definitive proof on it, but who knows? Who knows? Were there non-disclosure? Was there a non-disclosure agreement between him and a student? I don't know. But nothing would shock me. And that in of itself, who cares? Liberal policies have been a disaster, and Mark Carney is reading from the same playbook. He's an advisor to the Trudeau Liberals. He's all in on the climate change agenda of having Canadians freeze to death in the dark by raising the cost of everything, especially energy. And then, of course, raising the cost of everything, because when you raise the cost of energy, it costs more to produce goods, costs more to ship goods, it costs us more to buy the goods, and just erodes our way of life. And so the one thing that conservative-minded Canadians can do is to remind your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, your family, everyone, that Mark Carney is just a better dressed, more educated version of Justin Trudeau, and that on the policy front, it's the same policies. Now, Mark Carney has come out, as has Chrystia Freeland, both saying that they will cancel the carbon tax, but they're still going to fight climate change, and that it is still important to reduce Canada's carbon footprint. How are you going to do that? Anyone who's seen this channel before knows where I stand on climate change. Yes, climate changes. This idea of anthropogenic or man-made climate change, the degree to which human activity impacts climate change, to me is an open question. the science behind it isn't science. The science behind it is computer model projections that are based on simulations that always turn out to be wrong. They tell you, in 5 years, in 10 years, this going back to the late 1970s, Nova, a popular science-based TV program hosted at times by Leonard Nimoy, he was interviewing the world's top climate experts back in the 70s. And they, at that time, were predicting that we were on the cusp of an ice age. And then we went into the 80s and we had the disappearing ozone layer. And we were all going to be dying of skin cancer. And then later, then we moved into the era of global warming. Then they rebranded global warming as climate change, although they still use the global warming rhetoric, talking about how much the temperature has risen, and they use faulty cause and effect reasoning. B followed A, therefore A caused B. We started burning fossil fuels in the 1800s, and the temperature's been rising throughout the 1800s into the 1900s and 2000s. Ergo, one caused the other. The problem is with that supposition is that climate has been changing for all of human history. I've mentioned it many times that in and around the year 950 AD, 950, 1000, that there was a period that climatologists refer to as the medieval warming period. And Greenland was named Greenland by the Vikings because it was a green land, and they saw it as an inviting place to put settlements, and they established permanent settlements, 2 major settlements on Greenland, and they flourished for about 200 years because of climate change, because the climate was warming. And that medieval warming period lasted for in and around 400 years. It came to an end in and around the year 1400. And then we entered into a period that is referred to as the Little Ice Age. Don't take my word for this. Look it up. Medieval warming period, Little Ice Age. The Little Ice Age is reckoned to have lasted from between 1400 until about 1800. So again, about a 400-year period. And there were catastrophic weather events recorded in Europe. There were accusations that it was man-made back then, although the man-made involved the supernatural. They had a term they referred to as weather cooking, that primarily women, witches, were consorting with the devil to negatively impact weather and to cause massive hailstorms and all kinds of catastrophic weather events. And then we went in around 1800, we entered the current trend, a warming period. And coincidentally, at the same time as we entered what appears to be a natural cycle of warming and cooling, we all started to burn fossil fuels. But now people say, well, it must be fossil fuels because we haven't seen these type of weather events and this type of warming in living memory. Well, if global climactic cycles of warming and cooling are 400 years, which certainly the data suggests as much, going back to the year 950 AD, 1000, well then we're about halfway through, and we got another 175, another 200 or so years to go in this warming period. So if we freeze to death in the dark, is that going to impact global climate? And I've said it many times. The simple fact of the matter is that there are just too many variables impacting weather, and variables likely that we're not even aware of. There are probably things that are forces in the world, in the universe, in our planet that impact weather that we're not even aware of. So how can you build a computer model? And that's why every time these climate quote unquote experts come out with predictions, they're always wrong. 10 years, 5 years. They keep saying 2000. Widely reported, read a BBC article from the year 2000 with climate experts, global climate experts saying that in a few short years, children will not know what snow is. And now they're building snowmen and snow forts down in Florida and Texas and Louisiana and Georgia, down in the Sun Belt. So, but there's more. There's more on the Canadian political landscape, especially for Canada's most populated province, Ontario, which is where I live. And this is another prediction that I got right, but wasn't a hard one. I'm just going to read what Danny's writing. He's filling everything up. Danny's calling it scientism, not science, and that is bang on the money. It's basically almost, it takes on all the trappings of a cult-like religion. And then Danny further writes, carbon dioxide makes up about 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere. I know it's a trace element in our atmosphere, carbon, oxygen, and other things. I think it's nitrous oxide. I don't know all the elements, but I know that carbon in of itself is a trace element in our atmosphere. Yeah, if you pictured our atmosphere as being a football field, well, with all the different elements in it, about 2-3 inches of that football field, that's the carbon part. So it's insane. In my view, my non-expert view, my non-meteorological view. However, there are individuals, and you can find them even here on YouTube. Jordan Peterson interviewed a gentleman who was head of meteorology at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, world famous professor emeritus, and he's throwing cold water on the whole alarmist state of fear that they're trying to promulgate on us. Anyway, the other bit of news for Ontario is that it's widely reported on Wednesday, Doug Ford will be going to Ontario's Lieutenant Governor General and will be asking that Queen's Park, our legislative assembly, that it be dissolved for the purpose of holding a provincial election. And the reason, and I already predicted this, it just took a little longer than I thought it would. The reason that Ford is doing this is there's a very good chance that the Liberals are going to be defeated in the next federal election. And Doug Ford is almost a slam dunk to be reelected. The Ontario's Conservatives are almost assured of re-election provided there is a Liberal government in Ottawa. If Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives form the government, then Doug Ford's chances of re-election go way down. That's the way it is in Ontario politics. Whenever there's a Liberal government in Ottawa, we almost always vote Conservative. And when there's a Conservative government in Ottawa, we almost always vote Liberal. There's been, over the last 50, 60 years, I only think one exception to that. That was when Frank Miller won, despite the fact that there was a Liberal government in Ottawa, but or rather a Conservative government in Ottawa. He won during the Mulroney era, but he won a very slim minority and it didn't survive. He won a very tiny minority, and the first opportunity that came around, the NDP and Liberals voted no confidence, and then they went to the Lieutenant Governor General and asked to form a coalition government, a supply side agreement, like the NDP just had with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. And the Lieutenant Governor General accepted their proposal, and Liberal David Peterson became the Premier of Ontario. That's just all ancient history. Let's see what's being written in the chat. There we go. I'm getting better at bringing up. Danny's writing, we are at about 400 parts per million. If the carbon falls under 180 parts per million, everything dies. Yeah, carbon, everyone should know this. Carbon is plant food. Anyway, No, it's Danny's the only one commenting, and I thank you, Danny, because you know I love the engagement. But if there are others on here who want to throw up a comment, you're welcome to, or you can wait until after and put something in the comment field. I enjoy reading the comments there as well. And I'll just interject here, you know, appreciate the thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, you're most welcome. Very bare bones, very basic, just an old 58-year-old Christian Canadian male, straight guy. Not that that matters. It's just that I tick every box for being, for having a voice that tends to be canceled in the, you know, landscape of ideas because, you know, shut up, boomer. You know, we've had this overhaul of Canadian society where we no longer consider ideas, thoughts, and opinions. Now, what's of primary importance is, well, it has to be the thought, idea, opinion of a disabled Aboriginal female with a homosexual orientation. Well, there, you know, we'll have you on CBC and CTV and Global, and we'll interview you because, you know, you tick off all the DEI boxes. Aboriginal, female, disabled, and homosexual. Hey, great. If you'd be transgender, that would be even better. This world has gone, pardon the expression, but it's gone batshit crazy. I'm not a big one for swearing, but sometimes the English language is a poor enough means of communication as it is. Why limit ourselves? Let's see. I think there was another thing. And Danny's writing that in greenhouses, they pump CO2 to promote large, rapid growth. And likewise, you can read, I think it's from Yale University, although I may have the source exactly wrong, but there is talk of arid, desert-like areas greening up, like the edge of the Sahara Desert. The desert is shrinking because of so much carbon in the atmosphere, and carbon, of course, again, is plant food. And if you don't remember that, go back and study your grade 7, 8, 9 biology notes on photosynthesis. Carbon is sucked out of the atmosphere by things like trees, which is why Canada, you know, I do not know, but I believe I've heard that we are not a net contributor to carbon because our forests are so vast and extensive that for every bit of carbon we emit, the trees suck it out, and even with the wildfires. But I may not have that 100% correct. But the one thing I do know is that China and India, to propel their growing economies, which is being fueled by cheap energy, what they're doing is they're bringing on coal-fired plants. That's widely reported. So we're starving in the dark while they're pumping out carbon like crazy by burning coal. And now we have President Donald J. Trump in the White House, and he just addressed the World Economic Forum. And as Danny put it the other night, stuck a finger right in the eye, said, we're going to be burning beautiful, clean coal. That's the way he referred to it. Beautiful, clean American coal. Because, I mean, if we are going to go electric for everything, if we're going to stop burning fossil fuels and they want to go electric and they don't want to touch nuclear, well, you got to do something, because the way the power grid works, I understand it at a very basic level, that as power is taken off the grid, whether it's plugging in your car, running your TV, lights, whatever, as power is coming off the grid, a commensurate amount of power has to be put onto the grid. And when you see these transformer stations, what they are is basically ways to speed up how fast power gets onto the grid, or likewise to slow it down. They have these large resistors in there that make the electricity travel a long ways before they're actually put onto the grid, for times when everything's good, the grid is stable, but then all of a sudden there's a sudden surge. And what they will do with these transformers is shorten the pathway and get the power on more quickly, so that there's, again, the same amount of power that's coming off the grid has to be put onto the grid. But if we're all charging electric vehicles, lights, our air conditioning, if too much power is coming off the grid, well, then you need a commensurate amount of power being put onto the grid. And we don't produce enough for everyone to be charging up their electrical vehicle every night when the sun isn't shining and no solar power is being put on the grid. And if the wind isn't blowing, well, then the windmills won't be putting any power onto the grid. And if we're not going to use nuclear, we got to do something, burn natural gas, burn coal, burn something to get power onto the grid. And so Donald Trump is talking about having a massive data centers created in the United States that are huge energy hogs. They just suck up energy like there's no tomorrow. Mining Bitcoin is an incredibly energy intensive endeavor. And then you have this blockchain technology that is equally very energy intensive. And if they're going to need power, and they're going to need redundancy. If there's not enough power on the grid, these plants may be supplying directly these data centers. And to be honest, this is one of the areas in which I'm not lockstep with Donald Trump at all. This idea of promoting cryptocurrencies, which is what a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, is. And this idea of the way crypto works is that there's a blockchain, and a blockchain is like a chain of custody. It tells you every transaction, every time money passes from one person to another, every transaction is recorded in the blockchain. And so that means if we move to a cryptocurrency style environment, that means every single transaction you engage in is recorded. There's a record of it. And so think about playing a poker game with your buddies and you lose $100 or win $100. Well, there will have to be a crypto exchange taking place, maybe between the phones or something like that, and it'll be recorded. And the government they're all seeing eye. They know every transaction. If a parent or a grandparent wants to slip a $10, a $20 bill, well, there are no $10, $20 bills anymore in a crypto world. Now, it'll be like cell phone technology. And we're moving into a dystopian world of one world government. I'm going to sit down now. My back's getting sore leaning forward like that. Let's reorient this just a bit. There we go. Coffee in hand. So that's where things stand in terms of the Canadian political landscape. Getting back to the subject line of this video. And I think it's vitally important in this country. The best option we have right now, best of the available options, not perfect, is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Will he live up to his promises of shrinking government and eliminating so much of the bureaucracy and streamlining things so that unleash the entrepreneurial spirit of the Canadian economy? Will he deliver on it? At least he has the rhetoric, and we'll find out we have to elect him to find out if the actions will line up with the rhetoric. And one area that I think is vitally important, and I don't think it's spoken of enough, in Canada, we only have a modicum of free speech. And that it should be hyper concerning to anyone who doesn't want to see Canada slip into a totalitarian type system. And we're close. We're closer than we think. Here I am. I'm on a YouTube channel. I'm speaking pretty freely, although we all know that there are certain ideas that I cannot say. There are certain things in this public square that is YouTube that I am not allowed to say. And if I say them, YouTube will slap me down. They'll take my content off. They'll preclude me from injecting my voice into the marketplace for a week or two or permanently. You better behave and only say the things that you're allowed to say. And this gets scary because the way that we improve, the way that society advances is through the challenging of so-called consensus views. I'll give an example for in the medical field. For probably 1,000+ years, bloodletting was the consensus view on how to treat disease. If someone was ill, the consensus view taught in medical schools of the day was that the humors in the blood are out of balance, and so you would bleed the person out and rebalance these humors. And that persisted into the 1800s and even into, in some sections, even into the early 1900s. Even the idea of cleanliness, in an OR, in an operating room. Doctors didn't used to scrub up. They would go right into surgery with their hands unwashed with goodness knows what on them, and operate on individuals. Florence Nightingale famously, I think it was her who advocated for cleanliness in medical settings. And she was derided and laughed at because she went against the consensus. And we're living in a world right now where those on the liberal side of the aisle, and I call them neoliberals, are very much in favor of censorship and are very much in favor of quelching free speech under the guise of protecting Canadians, and Democrats are the same in the US. You need to protect people from misinformation and disinformation. We live in this digital information age, and misinformation and disinformation is dangerous. Dangerous to whom? That is the question. If I was the world's leading expert on how bleeding is the best way, bleeding a patient, this is the best way to improve human health. If I'm the world's leading expert on this, it's in my vested interest to label anyone who comes along suggesting any alternative as a purveyor of misinformation and disinformation, because I'm going to lose my standing, I'm going to lose money. And it brings me to, atrazine. I was watching RFK Jr. being interviewed 2-3 months ago by Jordan Peterson before the election took place. And he was talking about atrazine. Atrazine is a pesticide herbicide that is banned in Europe. However, in North America, both Canada and the US, it is widely used. And he cited a study that was done in Stanford that I've actually seen. You can find it online. Just type in atrazine, and I don't remember exactly how to spell atrazine. I think it's A-T-R-A, like the shave, Atra, and then Z-E-N-E, I think. Atrazine, they did a study at Stanford, and they used quantities of atrazine lower than what the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, allows, and they exposed African frogs to it. And what they found is that a number of the frogs flipped genders. Male frogs became female frogs that produce viable eggs. Completely turned their gender. You talk about transgender. Well, these frogs went from being male frogs to being female and producing viable eggs. And a number of other frogs, I forget the exact numbers, were sterilized. And that's the impact on frogs. So what do the studies say about its impact on humans or other mammalian species? Well, there are no studies. They haven't been done. And if you're the makers of atrazine and making millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars off this product, Would you want those studies to be done if your primary motivator is the bottom line and delivering, shareholder value? If the studies are done and are found to have a negative impact on human beings, on mammalian species, well, then this product that earns you, goodness knows, I don't know what the profit is on atrazine, but if it's in the tens of millions, hundreds of millions, maybe even billions, it wouldn't surprise me. Well, then you're not going to be making that money anymore. So what are you going to, the question is, are you going to engage in efforts to try and suppress that? And then you can quite honestly say, well, there is no evidence to suggest that atrazine impacts mammalian species. Well, what do the studies say? Well, we haven't done the studies. Well, then how can you say it's this old line of absence of evidence doesn't mean evidence of absence. Just if you don't look, you don't find. And right now we have a situation where we have a government in place in Canada where they want to quelch dissenting opinions. And I've said many times on my channel that I'm something of a free speech absolutist. And the best disinfectant is sunlight. But we need to have open discussions where everything is on the table. So many of the presupposed ideas like bloodletting, we'd still be bleeding people if there weren't individuals who challenged the all-powerful consensus. And who were the biggest purveyors of misinformation and disinformation during the COVID era? Look at what CNN did to Joe Rogan when they said that he was taking a veterinary medicine when he was not. He was taking the human formulation of ivermectin, an anti-inflammatory, antiviral. My medical degree is from Facebook. I don't know. But I want all the information. If I'm going to give informed consent on anything, I need all the information, not just the information that the government says, well, everything else is misinformation, disinformation, so you're not allowed to see that. Think about what happened in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. They had their institute of the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Heredity and genetics and anthropology and eugenics. And they had proof, they claimed, scientific proof that certain races were inferior to the all-powerful Aryan race. And it was, according to them, scientifically proven. You were not allowed to challenge the consensus view. Challenging the consensus view is the hallmark of a functioning and robust democratic society. Let me see if anything's been written. I imagine I've missed some. I can get it to come up. Oh, it will. Sorry for these gaps. Oh, a lot has been written. Am I upside down? There we go. I'm right side up again on me. There we go. Yeah, Denny's writing that we must use doublespeak. When we have to put things out, forcing people to read between the lines, then you are not living in a free and robust liberal democracy. Classic liberal. Classic liberals absolutely protect and stand up for free speech. Denny's, do you think CBDCs will bring back an underground barter system? The underground barter system already exists. But when we get into a surveillance state, I mean, we're talking about having, it's almost like these World Economic Forum types. Look at what China has done, and they're envious, and they want to bring it into the rest. They want to bring it all into the Western world. And in China, they have closed circuit TV cameras just about everywhere in every populated area. that can identify individuals biometrically or even by their manner of walking, their gait. And man, yeah, I can see it bringing barter in, but you can't build wealth through bartering. You can't. It just doesn't work. Danny's further writing, freedom of speech means that my right to speak does not end when you are offended. And, that was the whole notion behind this compelled speech law that they brought in, forcing people like university professors to use made up words like Z and Zaire instead of the obvious words he, her, his, him, she, these pronouns that they invented out of thin air. Enough of the transgender garbage nonsense. Danny read that paper. Are you talking about the one on the frogs? Flipping gender. Some of the African frogs were rendered sterile. Others, male frogs, became female. And then Danny's writing, they made fun of Alex for saying it turned the frogs gay. He wasn't far off. That's speaking euphemistically. That's speaking, being euphemistic, being, I'm trying to think of another way to put it. Like Trump now, he gets fact checked for saying that inflation has never been worse. Well, okay, maybe there's been a previous time in history, but if you ask most Americans, how's inflation been for the last 3-4 years? Ask Canadians, and they'll say, this is the worst it's ever been. Who cares if 70 years ago or 80 years ago or 100 years ago it was worse? It's okay to contextualize things for climate, but with inflation, you're not allowed to do it. Come on. They suck and blow. These globalist types suck and blow all the time, when it's good for them. I've got John 5 has shown up. Hey, John, good evening to you as well. And John is throwing something at me I wasn't aware of. I'll have to check into this, that CN Rail is thinking of striking Tuesday or something like that. Their back to work legislation that forced the CNCP and forced the rail workers back to work certainly didn't pass the sniff test in my eyes, and there was going to be challenges to it in the court system. Maybe I'll have to read up on that. I'm just worried, genuinely, that we're going to be heading to a situation where Mark Carney, they're handing him the leadership of the Liberal Party. They might as well just cancel the leadership race. Chrystia Freeland, save yourself the anguish. You're not going to win. You've got no hope. It's Mark Carney. It's a coronation. They're going to install him. The media will be all over him. Canadians are far more compliant than our American friends to the south. American friends basically stuck their finger in the eyes of the mainstream media and said, we're done. We're voting for Trump regardless. We're voting for someone who knows the difference between a man and a woman. I think that should be a prerequisite for anyone running for any public office. They should know how many genders are there. If you cannot answer that question correctly, then you should be disqualified from running for public office. If someone wants to say that would I support it being banned, the idea of expressing the idea that gender is a societal construct and that subjective feelings should override objective biological reality? No, let's go. Matt Walsh did a beautiful job with his What is a Woman? In Canada, the way we're moving, guys like Trudeau and probably Mark Carney too would want to have that labeled hate speech for defending basic biological reality. And it gets back to my favorite topic, the Bible. This is God's creation. We like to think, Satan whispering in our ear, read the first few verses of Genesis, and God created, and God saw that it was good, and it was good, and it was good. Well, now humanity, we look upon everything and go, no, not good enough, God, not good enough. We can do better. We can, genetically engineer GMOs, genetically modified organisms. We can change the genetic fabric of foods, of organic foods, of wheat, of corn, and we can make it better. And now look at what's happening in this world. Look at what's happening in the Western world, where so much of what we eat is GMO, genetically modified. Explosion in obesity, explosion in diabetes. What's with all this gluten-free stuff? What's with all the celiac disease that suddenly emerged? When I grew up as a kid, I used to take peanut butter sandwiches to school when we went on a trip. Now you can't, none of the kids can handle peanut butter. What has happened? What has happened in our world? Now, years ago, kids used to get sick. Years ago, kids used to get diseases like measles or mumps. They got them. They were called childhood diseases. And then they would get infected. And then after the infection cleared, they had immunity from prior infection. They would not get measles or mumps the rest of their lives. As a matter of fact, parents back in that era used to, chickenpox parties. One kid got chickenpox. Well, let's get everyone together and let's all get chickenpox together so we can all, everyone gets it at the same time and we get it over with. That was the way humanity operated. We were willing to put up with a bit of discomfort, but we've been conditioned now to believe that God did a crappy job. Childhood disease, we don't need that anymore. We can do better. We can come up with interventions to prevent a child from ever getting sick from these things. And it's part of our conditioning. Because God, you didn't do a good enough job. And I don't mean that seriously. You know that already. And so if are you overweight? Here, we've got medication for that. If you're anxious, we have medication for that. Is your diet giving you heart problems? We've got medication for that. Take Lipitor, Crestor, take these, I can't remember the name of what type of medication they are, like constantly. And we never try to get to the root cause. Well, wait a minute, what is causing the obesity? What is causing the heart problems? What are causing all these sudden allergies to wheat and peanuts and everything else? Well, don't worry, we got medication. Ka-ching, ka-ching. I should probably pull it back now. I probably walked as close to the line as I can. Hopefully I haven't gone too far. See what's being written. Now, I have John 5 asking or writing, could Carney win against Poilievre? We don't know. We don't know yet. Now, could he? Yes, I think he could. If the Liberals can poll 33%, that could be enough to give us a similar situation to what we have now and what we've had since 2019, where the Liberals lose the popular vote, but win enough seats to have a minority, and then they can have the NDP sign on and prop them up for another 4 years, 5 years, 4. Used to be 5. Canadian parliamentary system, Westminster model, a mandate used to last 5 years, and then Stephen Harper brought in the fixed election date law, and now it's 4. The maximum a government can run is 4 years. Actually, should it be 4 or 5? It's open for debate. Trying to get the comments come back up. and I'm going to wrap up soon, but election federally, things are shaky for conservative-minded, common-sense Canadians. Things are shaky. There are a lot of Canadians who still get their marching orders from CBC Nightly News, and they think they're informed. They think they've got the truth. They think they've avoided the misinformation and disinformation, when in point of fact, so often, the CIA has now just come out and said that, it's likely that the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it did come from a lab in Wuhan, China, a lab leak. And yet, go back to 2020 and CBC News and their like-minded media programmers would say that is misinformation, that is disinformation. Likewise, with the COVID jabs, they stop transmission. You get it, you don't get sick. You can't pass it on. And if someone said, well, wait a minute, then that would be late. If anyone questioned that, they would be spreading misinformation, disinformation. How did we get to know the truth? By challenging the bogus consensus view that was being foisted on us. And if we want to live in a world where we do actually pursue the truth, we've got to get rid of the Liberals, whether it be led by Trudeau or Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland. So, but could Carney win? I think it is conceivable. Danny doesn't think so. Danny says there's no way that Carney beats Pierre. We will see. I just think there's a tendency to discount the power of the media. And I think the media still has a lot of sway in Canada, far more so than the United States. Danny, put 10 men and 1 woman on an island, come back in 1,000 years. Bones of males and females, 1 trans and when they go and they do an archaeological dig and they come up with find the body of an individual who died during a war, they'll say, this was a civilian woman. And they don't have to hold a seance to find out how the owner of those bones identified. There's male, there's female. Danny, we live in a bubble wrap society. Now, and you got to go back, this has been a progression. We've been progressing toward the cliff. And that's, we used to be able to put up with far more. And now we can't put up with anything. We can't put up with any level of discomfort. And and government steps in and is going to solve everyone's problems, whereas government typically, as Reagan famously said, the 9 scariest words in the English language, I think it's 9, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. 9. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. No, government is the problem. Government needs to get out of the way in a lot of cases. They just make life too challenging. There we go, live chat. Danny's quoting Mark Twain, if you don't read the newspaper, you are uninformed. If you do read the newspaper, you are ill-informed. Danny says, when he was growing up, scars are cool. Now scars have been replaced by tattoos, of which I have none. I think it's in Deuteronomy, there's a prescription against marking up the body. I thought about getting a tattoo years ago in and around the age of 40. I was thinking of getting either a cross or a phoenix. Thankfully, I'm glad that I did not. I don't think a tattoo will preclude anyone from getting, having a place in glory. But anyway, I've rambled on long enough. I've gone on for pretty much an hour. What did you think of the standing versus sitting? Is standing okay? I might do it again. I probably will at some point. I kind of enjoyed it. Danny got a tattoo when he was, quote, young and dumb. Yeah, we do stuff. When I was a kid, I got an earring. And it's kind of funny. I'd gone up to my dad, old school guy, and said, and this was in the 70s when I was in grade 7 or 8. So it's the 1970s. I went up to my dad. I said, what would you think if I got an earring? And laughing, he went, yeah, go ahead. So I did. I went to the mall, got one of those little training studs, twisted around with the rubbing alcohol that they gave you, and probably had it on for a few days before he even noticed. And then finally he went, what are you doing? And I said, well, I asked you. And he said, go ahead. Well, I didn't think you were serious. And I said, well, I was. Then he said, oh, my friends are going to think you're gay. I said, Dad, that's the right ear. Mine's in the left. He went, they don't know that. It's kind of funny. Danny had 3 earrings. He still got them, but doesn't wear them. Actually, I had 2. I got 2 piercings on my left ear. I know it's backwards on here. Yeah. This is my left ear. And I got 2 piercings. And then what happened is I developed a massive cyst. And I actually required plastic surgery to remove the cyst. And then my earlobe had expanded so much they had to do a little work on it. But anyway, that's, if you notice, there's a slight difference between this earlobe, it's more rounded, and this one is more or less sewed in. I don't know if you can see the difference. Kind of makes my head look tilted a bit, but whatever. I have to point it out or no one notices. God bless. This is our Father's world. Okay? This is God's world. And we need to acknowledge reality. We need to stop trying to make it better. That's my Christian opinion. We need to embrace the fabric of reality, aim high, and work our way through things without going to, sorcery. When you read in the book of Revelation, it uses the Greek word for sorcery, for magic, for demonic sorcery, is pharmakia. You can look into that yourself. Pharmakia. Look it up on, it's the ancient or old Greek word, and it's translated as sorcery. And look at what's happening. You talk about evil being unleashed on this world. Our kids are obese. They're allergic to everything. Food, just leave it the way God made it. But I'll end the video the way I always do. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord God of heaven above, may he grant you peace, and he will. Even in these troubling, crazy times, thank God that you're alive. You're here to witness it. There is something to be said for this idea, may you live in interesting times. It's not boring. It's not boring, and it's going to get more and more interesting as we go forward. Because right now, the enemy has been pushing for decades and has made huge gains. And now a significant enough portion of the population has woken up and has started to say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe there's some wisdom here. Maybe, maybe we are pushing things too far. Maybe we do need to get back to fundamentals. Maybe we do need to get back to basic, simple common sense. And the enemy is not going to be happy. The enemy is going to come roaring back. And things are going to get rough. Is that going to happen in the coming months, years? Definitely within the coming years. I think it might even happen this year. I think the World Economic Forum types who look at China and idolize it and want to see the social credit score brought over here, whereas the government decides what behaviors they want to reward and what behaviors they want to punish. and it's all tied to a score. And you want to go on vacation? Well, your social credit score isn't high enough. You're not allowed to go on vacation. You want to go, kid, you want to go to that rave, you want to go to that big nightclub, you want to go to that party. Well, you've been jaywalking and you've been expressing ideas that we have determined are misinformation, disinformation, so you're not allowed to go. Anyway, I'll leave you there. As for my next video, got a few ideas kicking around in my head. One of them, because it got a lot of engagement when I've done videos before on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I've had some more thoughts on it. So I'm thinking I may do another video on that, asking the question and giving forth my opinions on whether or not members of the LDS faith, are they saved? Are they saved? Will they, when they come to judgment, will they be accepted in? Ultimately, I don't know, but I have an opinion and I have a preference, but I won't give them out now. I'll save that for when I do a video on it. So God bless, and we'll talk to you soon. Maybe Hank Holiday will show up from that. I believe he's LDS from the great state of Texas. So God bless everyone, and we'll talk to you very soon. Good night. Boom.